Also, the indiscriminate dissemination of certain information in the environment. So, the control parameters here and the control parameters in this process are the probabilistic characteristics of the process. That is, the management is not done in such a way that, like this little element, you raise your hand, you lower your hand, so you raise your leg and you lie down or so on. Management is carried out in such a way that probabilistically predetermined. The vast majority will do what I need. This is scientifically called probabilistic predetermination. That is, I will exert such informational influence that many people will behave as I need. An example, the path of 1991. Those who organized it knew that in the Soviet army, the entire commanding staff were lackeys or sycophants to higher-ups, and therefore there will not be a single brave officer, commander who will rise and go, so to speak. At that time in Moscow, specialists say, one battalion could solve everything. But that battalion was not found. Why? And because probabilistically predetermined who occupied the posts in the army, those who were sycophants to the higher-ups. That is, the same was happening in the party, who became the party secretary. So Gorbachevs and others, those who fawned over higher-ups rose, and those certain psychics indeed remember. And the one who knows how all this is done says, don't worry, no one will move. Moreover, before this was done, there was various testing. So, how this is, well, that's a separate topic. We will also get to it. So, let's consider, that is, first those who manage social processes conduct a certain test. Well, in particular, what are you talking about? Go away. Let's answer now. There is testing on television. That is, some idea is thrown out, and they watch the reaction, whether someone will call, whether there will be outrage or not. Ha! The Russians swallowed it. Let's keep pushing them. That's it. That is, those who understand and those who do not. Therefore, we and our newspaper measure for measure, and everything that happens around the concept of public safety, we do not overlook such things. We react to all tests, and we say, guys, we understand everything you are doing. All these Solovyovs, Posners, Svanitsis, and others. How to manipulate, how testing is conducted, and this is intentional. These are the agents of the global conspiracy who clearly carry out the assigned tasks for testing, including politicians when they are invited to the barrier or to the mirror or somewhere else. They are asked a question, and they are making these little bumps, and they see that he understands nothing. That is why Solovyov behaves so incredibly brazenly at this barrier, absolutely mocking both the fools who come out, and he just utterly plays them like puppies in this show. This is testing as well. Including at such a level, public opinion polls are the same. Do they understand anything or not? Therefore, from this point of view, for example, our relationships are paradoxical when you know all this and understand it. Right now, many patriots are saying how bad they are for passing the referendum law, and now the people cannot express their will. But let's ask the question, does the people understand what is happening? If it is in such a torn apart state, when one can manipulate the consciousness of the people, that is, they can be prepared to accept such actions and opinions that will act against their own people. That is like in Igor Talkov's song about the executed general. Do you remember? You indeed went to fight for the people's power against your own people. What happened in Spain? There was a national government, a people's government. It was overthrown by whom? By the people themselves. They organized the sabotage of electric trains, remember. They drove the people out into the streets. Down with it. What does he understand there? He understands nothing about governance. Down with it. And they overthrew the national government, nationally oriented. And with the hands of the people, they installed internationalists who act in the interests of the global backstage. Here you have, so to speak, these referendums. That is, without knowledge of governance theory, it is useless to talk about anything. That is, this is pure nonsense. That's why we say we need to give people this knowledge so that they are not hostages to those who manipulate their consciousness. And for all this, it is necessary to know and provide people with these basic elementary things, as I am talking about some complex, lofty, abstract matters. Well, the combined method is essentially the utilization of both in conjunction. An example of leadership management, an example of an unstructured management method. Imagine what is depicted in this picture. Here is the left bank, the right bank. The bottom is the river. Water flows gently and calmly in the river. A chip is flying above. It floats in the foam of the waves. On the chip stands a leader shouting at the top of his lungs, "I will lift Russia off its knees." The people on the shore watch and think, "Wow, what a cool Volkovich. Wow, what a guy. What a smart one. What is he saying? And what is he saying? And here's what he is saying." So, around the leader, as always, there are advisors, many of them. Among them are one or two advisors, well, they are called the leader's secret advisors, who are, so to speak, very knowledgeable, in glasses, so to speak, smart, have read a lot, and they give the leader wise advice, providing him with something new to shine before the people, before the crowd. And where does he get these pieces of advice? Does he come up with them himself? No. Leaving the realm of official relations, he goes home, or wherever, into the realm of unofficial relations. And there are such gatherings which Leo Nikolaevich Tolstoy described very well in the novel War and Peace. You remember the salon of Madame Chirard there, where all the aristocrats would come, sipping cognac, smoking cigars, and exchanging various news. And the authorities would share some wise thoughts there. This crowd, which gathered from all sides, drew these new ideas from the authority figure, whether it be a professor, a doctor, a scientist, or someone else, a writer, a poet, it doesn't matter who. So, the authority figure announces some new trends. This one listens, leaves. The leader voices these new trends. Where is his authority from? And it turns out that what is drawn further was revealed after the opening of the archives, including those of the KGB. It turns out there are up to 10-14 links, that the transmission of this information, trends and so on, reaches. So, there is this guardian of authority. And this guardian draws information, news, from the clan, the healer's clan, through a certain system, a chain. So just remember that little pyramid, you know, the top of the pyramid. That is indeed the clans of healers that pass all this news up to the top. So, one concept is transmitted, so to speak, through the chain. This one conveys their signs. The sign voices them. This one carries. This one announces. The people do not see any of this. Here, Omar Khayyam has a wonderful illustration of what I said. This entire scheme of the poem sounds like this. What we see is only one visibility. Far from the surface of the sea to the bottom, considering the obvious, in the world to be insignificant, for the essence of things is not visible. So the management of such leaders, chiefs, including Lukashenko's, Hitler's and others, is from this series of how management is directed. By the way, we say in the concept like this, aha, if you can direct management like this. By the way, we say in the concept like this, aha. Therefore, we cannot counteract you, just as we cannot create the same chain and establish it. It is important to convey information. And pay attention. Many of you know that many journalists and leaders are already using our terminology, including the vector of goals, management concepts, sustainability, and so on. In other words, it is breaking through. And that is what we need. Why? Because people are starting to perceive all of this. And those who know the concept, many are already telling us, what is this with him? They speak your language. And why? Because for them this is something new, and they are already seasoned, ready. In other words, it's called competition. Here is one journalist, another journalist. This one is showing off, and the second one also wants to show off. Why? Because he has nothing. He runs to find something new. Oh, these ones are saying something interesting, and he presents that as his own. I am smart. So, well, for God's sake. The information that is voiced affects people. In other words, he conveyed the information that we need. From our point of view, what difference does it make who said it? Petrov, Ivanov, Sidorov. Does it capture people's minds? It captures. Is that good or bad? Good. Therefore, they themselves not realizing it work for us. Those who understand, they silence us. But they can't hold on because it's called competition. That's how unstructured management works. Therefore, knowing this scheme of unstructured management, in essence, it can be used. This is a manager of some enterprises. We already have a lot of such examples across the country when we called this management interception. That is, it doesn't matter to us. To us, 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 to us. We have a different goal, a different concept. So it doesn't matter who will be at the top, but what will be done for the benefit of society. Next, we need to know the management modes. And here are the management modes presented. What are they? Balancing and maneuvers. What does balancing mode mean? The system balances within the permissible limits of the upper and lower. If it concerns some technical system, it deviates within the allowable so-called its oscillations. For example, if we talk about an airplane, here it is flying in the corridor and its course deviates, and so on, for example, and so on. So, the engine, its noises, they also oscillate within certain limits, some oscillations. That is the upper limit, the lower limit. When it goes beyond the limits, it is already abnormal for the system. That is, the balancing mode is when the system operates normally within the allowable limits. What are maneuvers? Maneuvers can be depicted here as strong and weak. This is when the system is smoothly transitioned from one balancing state to another balancing mode. And here is presented a strong maneuver, which is performed in a short time. And here is a weak maneuver, when the transition from one balancing mode to another balancing mode takes a long time. Well, these pictures seem complicated with some twists and curves, but I will explain this to you using the example of our Russian history. Here our country, Russia, was in a balancing mode under the rule of the Tsar father. Moreover, for centuries, then they decided to transition the country, meaning Russia, from the control of the national bourgeoisie and the monarch into another balancing mode under the control of a transnational internationalist mafia. And this essentially took about 50 years. 100. It was a long, weak preparatory maneuver. It ultimately ended with the strong maneuver of the October Revolution. Bang, bang! And in just a few days, the country was switched to a different balancing mode. That is, generally speaking, in relation to social systems, the transition of countries and peoples involves some preparation. Then, at the final Somo stage, a sharp and strong maneuver. If we now talk about our perestroika, what then? After Stalin's rule over the country, when we were in a balancing mode of building a just society, we were passed through the brainless ones like Khrushchev, Trotskyist, Brezhnev, Gorbachev, and so on. That is, they were preparing us. If you remember, how many years were we prepared? From 1953 to 1985, when perestroika began, how many? Up to 90. Almost 40, just like the Jews were led through the desert. That is, under the leadership of Nikita Sergeyevich and so on. Well, they led us and led us, but what did it all end with? A transition from a just society, so to speak, from hidden totalitarianism to overt totalitarianism. How? A strong maneuver in August of 91. Remember, right, bang bang, and under the leadership of Gorbachev with Yeltsin, the GKCHP, and we woke up in a different country. So here are examples of these maneuvers. So what are they doing now? Again, they are preparing a weak maneuver through the party. What am I getting at? It's not just like that. When you know the methodology and see the overall course of things, then what do? They are preparing the people for a harsh fascist variant, as we discussed, right? That is, all these explosions around the world, including here, mean that since there are multiple variants, look where they are bending again, towards the restoration of Marxism. Why, because they need Marxism. But they, the Marxists, are modifying post-social democratic parties. They are attacking Zhuganov and will transfer the leadership to these people towards social democracy. What is the regime of social democracy? And this is an intermediate variant to formulate. A fascist regime. Why? Because social democracy implies solving specific tasks. That is, social democrats say, people, workers, we will take care of you. What should we take care of? Of raising salaries, of some benefits and other payments, various allowances, as long as this system is not radically changed. That is what social democracy is. But since social democracy cannot change the overall outcome of things, it fails. Under the leadership of social democrats, everything collapses, and the country is led to the perception of fascism. How did Hitler come to power? On what basis? After the social democracy that brought Germany to its knees, the people gladly accepted the Führer. This is what is being prepared for us. Therefore, this also needs to be known. Thus, management regimes are determined by the vector of the management goal. After this, what we have discussed, we can also recall the 5 types of power. So in the introductory lecture, we talked about how we will be deceived when discussing the 3 independent branches of power: legislative, executive, and judicial. And I use the example of the left hand. This finger represents conceptual power. This one is ideological. This one is legislative, executive, and the powerless judicial investigative power. Well, it was somewhat on an emotional level, that laws are invented based on ideology and so on. Now, through the complete management function, see how clearly, even more fully and clearly, it will appear that there are indeed 5 types of power. So, there is a complete management function, which we have already covered. It consists of 7 points. First, the identification of the environmental factor that affects the system. The formation of a recognition stereotype for the future. Formation of the management goal vector. Formation of the management concept. Organization of the structure that will do all this. Control over the activities. And maintaining it in a working condition. Therefore, to implement all this by oneself, what powers should there be? And look, the conceptual power, its task is to recognize the factors that affect society. It forms the goal vector in relation to each factor, and it forms the management concept for achieving these goals. This is where we say conceptual power, and why we do not have it in our country. Because we do not know where we are flying, what we are doing, what the goal is, and so on. And the concept of management, because we do not have it. And what is conceptual power? It is autocratic by nature. And it completely disregards all democratic procedures in any way. It doesn't care about everything that the majority decides. The cell has ruled. But maybe the cell is wrong. After all, the majority does not mean that it is true. Sometimes one person can stand against everyone, but he is right. How to determine? We will also address this question. That is, nothing is decided by the majority. But this concept is not good. It says that the cell has ruled. The majority of sheep approached the ballot boxes and dropped in their papers. That's it. This is democracy. The majority chose. But they don't talk about the fact that this majority was misled through informational manipulation. You see, they hide this. Therefore, conceptual power is arbitrariness. But arbitrariness is either moral or immoral. What kind of arbitrariness is prevailing now? Immoral. Satanic arbitrariness. And we speak against your immoral arbitrariness. We will oppose it with our moral arbitrariness, and we will see whose will prevail. Therefore, conceptual power is autocratic. And what comes next with power? What is power? Everyone says, is power just a label on an office? Did Yeltsin really rule the country? No, everyone knows this. And who? The one who invests ideas into the minds of those who govern is the one who rules. That is, power is the realizable ability to govern in practice, not just to declare one's intentions. Therefore, it is not necessary to have a label on your office. But if you are really in control, that's why we say that our party is already real. And the concept of public safety governs social processes in society. And in this sense, we are the conceptual power that carries a certain concept of life in society. And what comes next? Ideological power dresses the concept in a form that is appealing to people. This is what I am specifically doing right now. Together with you, all of us present here. We are creating a film, an educational one. For what purpose? So that people perceive all of this. What is it? We are dressing the concept in a form that is attractive to people, explaining what it is, how and why. That's it. And what comes next? Legislative power provides legal norms and forms to the concept. The executive brings the concept to life, and the judiciary maintains order. Here are 5 types of power, based on the complete function of governance. That is, we have now arrived at this fist. Remember what we discussed in the introductory lecture, the 5 types of power, not just for the sake of it, but based on how laws are developed. And we reach this understanding through the complete function of governance. But here, the fist is depicted in this diagram. You see, this is the embodiment of conceptual power. It is ideological power, legislative and executive. And the little finger represents the powerless judicial investigative authority. Now, concluding this chapter on the sufficiently general theory of management, we talk about managing human society as a whole. What do we have here? And again, look, there is a little person who are managed by society. Society is managed by the Bermuda Triangle. The legislative, executive, and judicial powers, that is, state bodies, manage society. And the laws, executive, and judicial power, they are managed. On one hand, there is a satanic design, a way of life. This is their ideological power, and you will dominate many nations, while they will not dominate you. Here you go. It is realized through pluralism. Everyone can express their thoughts. There can be many opinions. Therefore, there are many management concepts, many gods. Choose any party. So here is this pluralism. It is realized in our Duma and so on. And what is pluralism? The realization of the principle. Divide, pit against each other, and rule. That is, each party defends the interests of a part of society, and all parties are at odds with each other, resulting in nothing. Therefore, we say that management should be closed through the hierarchically highest encompassing governance, that is, the divine design of life organization, to stop this idiotic pluralism. And to establish feedback again through the hierarchically highest encompassing governance. This will indeed allow humanity on our beloved planet Earth, our home, to enter a sustainable management mode. After a short break, we will continue and will consider the following main provisions of the sufficient general theory of management. Break.